It's one of the most instantly recognizable songs and iconic music videos of the entire rock era. And though this bright and quirky tune will have you singing along really from the start, its story is much more bitter than sweet. In fact, the massive hit was so overhyped that its lead singer hated singing it. And its success became one in a series of events that led him down a path of personal destruction quickly thereafter. So is this song just a caricature of a band who had more to say? Or is it one of the most beloved hits of the time? I'm going to let you decide. The story's coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember the days when music was in your Walkman instead of a cloud, subscribe below right now. You're really going to dig this music community. It's the story straight from the legends and the stories about the songs. We also have a Patreon that you're going to want to check out. There you're going to find an additional catalog of exclusive content, and you can even become an honorary producer and to help us curate this music history of this channel. It's time for another episode of our series, Bottle Lightning, and this is a sad one. In 1990, Blind Melon frontman Shannon Hoon wrote in his journal, "My hometown really never held a future for me, except maybe a prison term or an early funeral. My life has changed so much, and now my dreams of singing to the world are very close."
I like watching the puddles gathering.
Needing to escape what he considered a stifling small-town existence in Lafayette, Indiana, Shannon Hoon boarded a Greyhound bus in March of 1990. His destination? California, the land of golden opportunities. Arriving in Los Angeles with the guitar in hand, Hoon set about searching for a rock band and a new lease on life. But Shannon, he wasn't the first member of Blind Melon to get there. Ahead of him, back in 1988, two childhood friends and musicians from Mississippi, guitarist Roger Stevens and bassist Brad Smith, had already set up camp in LA. They had come there for the same reasons, to chase their musical dreams. While in the Sunshine State, they were in and out of several transitory bands. Now, later they met Shannon Hoon through a mutual friend at a party, and there Shannon auditioned for the duo, playing an original song that he called Changes on his acoustic guitar. Rogers and Brad were sold, and they immediately brought him aboard. Shannon's song had the same kind of vibe and the same kind of attitude that they wanted for their music. Now, previously, the pair had met rhythm guitarist Christopher Thorne at a different audition, and they invited him to join as well. Chris, who originated in Pennsylvania, I believe, he kept the California transplant streak going. Months later, the foursome called upon Glenn Graham, a drummer from the Mississippi club circuit, and that rounded out the band. They were ready to go. With the band in place, the quintet's first order of business was to record a demo, which once finished caught fire immediately. Almost from the get-go, buzz started generating around this band, which they called Blind Melon. Apparently, it was a term that Brad's father used to call his unlikely to succeed next-door neighbors. "We'd only been together for like a week," said Shannon, "and the 4-track fell into someone's hands, and we got a call from someone who just wanted to represent us. We were like, we only have 5 songs. What is there to really represent?" According to Rogers, the next thing they knew, they were having dinner with 10 different record companies and lying to all of them. We're like, yeah, we got 20 songs. We've been together for a year. Now, one reason that there was so much hype around this band was because of a prominent connection that Shannon Hoon had in the business. It was a topic that Shannon was goaded into talking about ad nauseum, one that he would really become tired of. But it's essential to the band's story. So back in Indiana, Shannon's sister and Guns N' Roses frontman Axl Rose were actually friends in high school. Since Shannon was a few years younger than Rose, they never really hung out together, but they did run with the same crowd. So when Shannon left for LA, his sister called up Axl Rose and asked him to keep an eye on her little brother. Now, Axl, who may have seen something of himself in Hoon, he invited him to sit in on the recording process of GNR albums Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. One day while Shannon was just hanging out at the studio, Axl and company asked him to sing backing vocals on some of the tracks, including Live and Let Die and November Rain. But one track in particular that really opened the doors for Shannon in the industry was Don't Cry. It was a huge deal at the time because it was the lead single. Guns N' Roses were, of course, one of the biggest bands on the planet, and having Axl give you his blessing was a really big deal. The band, and Shannon in particular, garnered even more notoriety after Rose invited Shannon to make a guest appearance in the video for Don't Cry. The result from all of this hype was, of course, a record contract. Capitol Records emerged as the victor from a lot of suitors. And in March 1991, Blind Melon signed, I believe it was a 7-record contract. So before we go more into it, let's take a quick break to recognize our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses that I always wear. Right now at Zenni.com, you can choose from over 1,100 pairs of glasses that are all under $30. You could get 3 or 4 pair for less than a concert ticket. You design them, you personalize them, and you just put in your prescription and your address, and they're going to deliver them right to your door. Check it out today at Zenni.com. So guitarist Chris Thorne said, "It just felt like success. From the day we got signed, we had all that buzz around us. So I thought we were going to be the next big thing. Initially, they were holed up in an LA rehearsal studio. Blind Melon got to work on their debut there. But their time in the LA scene was short-lived, and by the end of 1991, Blind Melon had actually relocated to North Carolina in search of a more inspirational setting, if you will. They all lived together in an old Durham boarding house that they dubbed the Sleepy House. Much of their first record was written in that place. Now, in February of 1992, Blind Melon migrated to Seattle, where they started recording with Pearl Jam producer Rick Parasher, and they ended up finishing in June of that year. Now, for anyone halfway familiar with the saga of Blind Melon and Shannon Hoon, you know that there's an elephant in the room. A very sad elephant. Shannon's drug addiction. It's a subject that still stings so many years later, but unfortunately it factors prominently into the narrative, so I'm going to try to touch on this as respectfully as possible. Shannon Hoon discovered drugs long before he arrived in California. The fact is that he loved to have a good time, is what his bandmate Roger said. He had a voracious appetite to have fun. Shannon was an intense person who wanted to live every moment to the fullest, and he believed that drugs helped facilitate that. According to his bandmates, cocaine was his thing, but he was no stranger to speed and pot or other things as well. With a new record deal, increased financial freedom, and all the rock star hype, Blind Melon had access to just about any vice that they wanted, and Shannon wanted drugs, unfortunately. It's not like he was ignorant of the dangers. Shannon confessed in his journals that drugs had become a problem in his life. He wrote, "Sober. Well, I don't know. I should, but I really don't want to. I find myself drifting in and out of sobriety mentally. What I want overshadows what I need a lot of the time." Getting high was a feeling that Shannon wouldn't or maybe couldn't give up. When Blind Melon finally released their self-titled debut on September 22nd, 1992, it was a down-to-earth blend of southern psych rock influences and 90s era alt-grunge. Blind Melon was unable to build much momentum with its initial offering. Reportedly, the head of Capitol was ready to give up on the album, but the label decided to try out one more single, the most off-the-wall song on the album, No Rain. It's not safe. It's not safe. And of course, it was a great decision because the song would catapult Blind Melon to the front lines of the Generation X zeitgeist. In truth, the band already had an inkling that No Rain could be a hit. Whenever Blind Melon played the song in concert, they couldn't deny just how deeply the song would resonate with people. It always received the strongest reaction on their set list. Everyone seemed to know the words, and they had just a great time singing along. No Rain was released as a single in 1993. On October 9th, it peaked at number 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. It also reached number 1 on the mainstream rock charts. In September, Blind Melon's album certified platinum, rising to number 3 on the Billboard album charts. Huge deal.
You people, I want to sing a little bit.
No Rain was definitely bigger than its peak chart position, though. It, of course, had a music video that defined MTV for a time. It's one of the most iconic and enduring images from the 90s, in my opinion. It played a prominent role in the band's success for sure. Video, of course, featured a 10-year-old girl dressed in a bee costume, a concept that was deliberately designed to mirror the album cover. Now, this bee girl is, of course, laughed off stage after an ill-received tap dancing performance, and she goes in search of people who will accept her. Toward the end of the video, she eventually discovers a group of dancing bee people. The video was just odd enough to be memorable and upbeat enough to put smiles on people's faces. Really had a huge impact. Though the band was leery of the whole bee girl idea, the video appealed to a lot of people and put a positive message out there, which was a little bit rare in the grunge era for those kinds of bands. By the end of 1993, Blind Melon's No Rain was in what drummer Greg Graham called full brainwash rotation. The video would leave a lasting mark on 90s viewers, later ranked number 22 on MTV's Greatest Videos Ever Made countdown. Now, as for the origins of the song, bassist Brad Smith wrote No Rain when he first moved to California. Just trying to survive, he spent his days working construction and then writing music in his off time. On weekends, he'd throw open his guitar case on Venice Beach and he'd play the boardwalk just for change. It was from out of this struggle to make it in LA that No Rain was born. According to Brad, there were a lot of days when he just felt really down. He'd ask himself, what am I doing out here? Should I just pack it up and go back to Mississippi? After all, LA was a tough chew you up and spit you out kind of town. But going back home just wasn't an option. Now, around the same time, Brad was dating a girl who was seriously depressed. She would sleep through sunny days and complain when it didn't rain. For a while, Brad told himself that he was writing the song from her perspective. But later he realized it was about him too. In Brad's words, No Rain is about not being able to get out of bed and finding excuses to not have to face the day. I'd rather it be raining so I can justify myself laying in the bed and not doing anything. But it's a sunny day, so you just got to go out and face it. Musically, this song is deceptively joyful. It's got this jaunty little, happy halfway island beat. It's kind of like Don't Worry, Be Happy, but much better.
Don't worry, be happy.
If you aren't taking the time to contemplate the lyrics, you're really missing out on its bittersweet message, important message. That's why I've always loved this song. It's a joyful lament. For me, it sums up my life at that moment as a teenager in the early 90s, trying to put on a happy face, masking the utter melancholy at the core, trying to find something to look forward to in a humdrum existence. My, how dramatic we were in our teens.
I like to keep my cheeks dry today.
So Brad Smith played No Rain on the beach for over a year before Shannon Hoon joined the band. And though Smith said it was a good song when he wrote it, he actually credits Shannon with making it a great song. No doubt about it. Shannon may have made it a great song, but for a while it was also his least favorite song. As Blind Melon became more and more synonymous with No Rain, Shannon Hoon found himself singing it so much that he just started to hate it. The band, especially Hoon, felt like the B-Girl song, as it came to be known, wasn't representative of Blind Melon. It was just a cartoon or a caricature. This is what Shannon Hoon said. I don't like the fact that some people like No Rain only because of the video. It needs to be the other way around. If it's not, then don't buy our record. Now, in hindsight, it's easy to see that the media blitz and accelerating fame was just overwhelming for Shannon Hoon. Growing up in Indiana, people had called him weird and just labeled him an outcast. And now that he had a hit record, everybody loved him. Shannon had a pretty hard time with that, figuring that out.
So stay with me and I'll have it made.
Behind the Strength of No Rain, Blind Melon's album with its 70s Southern sound shot up to the charts from number 156 all the way to number 3 in 7 weeks. Their success kept them touring for 2 years, and pressures of stardom continued to mount. With the rock star lifestyle, Shannon found it increasingly easier to indulge in his vices. When manager Chris Jones tried to talk to Shannon into going to rehab, the singer flat out refused. But on April 8, 1994, the world was shaken when it was discovered that Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain had taken his own life. Shannon was shaken too. That night, Blind Melon was scheduled to perform on The Late Show with David Letterman. And what became a message for himself and anyone else watching, Shannon drew a question mark on his forehead, and he performed his very personal song, Change.
Feel the sun coming out today, no staying here.
Afterwards, Shannon was ready to confront his addictions. In May of 1994, he actually entered a month-long rehabilitation program. On May 3rd, he wrote in his journal, "I spoke today at an AA meeting for the very first time. I could barely hold myself together. I know I'm an addict and that I do need to do what I can to stop it, or it will kill me." After completing his 30-day rehab program, Shannon fought to stay clean and claimed some personal victories. Later in August, he reunited with the band to play Woodstock 94. It was a monumental moment for Blind Melon, the biggest show of their career by far.
Let's see how loud we can hear all you people sing this song.
However, after completing the set, Shannon told manager Chris Jones that he was tripping on acid. The relapse was a heart-rending setback, ending 3 months of sobriety. The downhill slide continued in the following months. That is when Blind Melon left for New Orleans to record their second album, Soup. It was, the band admitted, a poor error in judgment. Residing in the Big Easy gave Shannon, convenient access to drugs, and soon he was experimenting with crack cocaine and heroin. He really was at such a low point, said guitarist Chris Thorne. I remember he told me that he had a black heart, and he just felt like a bad person. Yet in the depths of the abyss, Shannon's drug abuse roller coaster made another upward climb when he found out that he was going to be a father. After discovering that his girlfriend Lisa Krause was pregnant, Shannon Hoon vowed to get clean, and he returned to rehab. On July 11, 1995, Shannon's girlfriend Lisa gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Nico Blue. And just a month later, on August 15, 1995, Blind Melon released their sophomore record, Soup. That reached number 28 on the U.S. Billboard Albums chart, and it featured the singles Galaxy and Toes Across the Floor.
Home in my galaxy. Oh yeah. God could be my friend in time.
For a brief moment, things were really looking up. As Blind Melon toured in support of Soup, Shannon even agreed to allow a drug counselor to accompany them on tour. But the victory was once again short-lived. After an LA concert on October 11, 1995, Shannon fell back into old habits. On October 20th, after a disappointing performance in Houston, Shannon threw himself into an all-night drug binge on the tour bus. According to his bandmates, there was no derailing him from his path of destruction that very night. He was just totally out of control. The band reached New Orleans early in the next morning on October 21st of 1995. While the members of the band crashed in their hotel rooms, Shannon Hoon wandered the streets of the Big Easy. Now, what happened next is a mystery. But at some point, Shannon returned to the tour bus and he climbed into a bunk. Hours later, the band's sound engineer tried to awaken Shannon, but he was unresponsive. After an ambulance arrived, Shannon Hoon was pronounced dead of a cocaine overdose. He was only 28 years old. Just so tragic. Now, in the wake of the tragedy, Blind Melon struggled to carry on. Just over a year later, on November 12, 1996, they released a new album comprised of demos and outtakes. They called it Nico, after Shannon's daughter. Within this compilation was a revamped take on No Rain called the Ripped Away version. The name is presumably taken from the song's lyrics, and it rips my life away, but it's a great escape. It is a fitting title in memory of Shannon on an album that was intended to keep his memory alive. Shannon was ripped away from all of us too soon. Unable to find a worthy replacement for Shannon Hoon, Blind Melon disbanded in 1999, and they remained that way for many years. Since that time, they have reformed with the addition of new lead singer Travis Warren. No Rain has been featured in several films and TV shows over the years, including Private Parts in '97, Without a Paddle in 2004, it was in the OC in 2005, Being Eric in 2009, and New Girl in 2011. No Rain is a no doubt about it masterpiece of the 90s.
I just want someone to save me.
It captures the essence of what it was like to be a teenager in those times, at least for me. We were all just searching. Who are we? And what does happiness feel like? Because we certainly knew what sadness felt like. Shannon's unique and joyful, yet dreary interpretation of this song is one of the highlights of radio from that time.
And I don't understand why.
I gotta mention the Rogers-Stevens guitar solo, one of my favorites of the decade. The contrast of Shannon Hoon's voice and the overall feeling of the song is delightful melancholy. It's strangely comforting for the Prozac generation. It's really hard to define.
I like to keep my cheeks dry today.
It conjures a feeling that, while hard to put your finger on, it's also very rare in the annals of popular song. I can't think of a song that is equal parts depressing and cheerful. Whenever I listen to it now, it makes my heart ache that Shannon Hoon is no longer with us. Of course, I never knew him, only through interviews that I've seen. He just seemed like such an innocent soul who was ravaged by a monstrous addiction that no one should ever judge. Like all of us, he was just trying to cope, and that was his way of coping. I mean, you can hear it in the lyrics that he sadly sings. And it rips my life away, but it's a great escape.
Life away, but it's a great escape.
And then when he sings, it's not sane, it's not sane.
It's not sane.
He was battling. It's especially apparent in the way that he sings, I just want someone to say to me, I'll always be here when you wake.
Be there when you wake.
And then again when he says, so stay with me and I'll have it made. All these years later, I hope that wherever Shannon Hoon is, that he knows how much his music has meant to us, the kids of Generation X. We really did have it made. Leave us a comment about Blind Melon and No Rain, this classic song. What are your memories of this song in that era and this band? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you dig our content, make sure that you subscribe below so that you never miss out on our videos, the stories of the songs. We'd love to have you as part of our community to talk about these great songs. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.